Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today is Stephen Lawrence Day here in the UK, and Stephen Lawrence, as many of you will know, was a young black man who was killed in 1993 in a racially motivated attack. And every year here in the UK, on this day, April 22nd, his life is celebrated as a memory, but also to bring to mind the dangers of racism. Now, for those of you who follow my blog, you'll know that I have a weekly lesson. And this week's weekly lesson is all about the life of Stephen Lawrence. So I'm going to read the essay for you that's on my blog to learn more about Stephen's life and legacy. The legacy of Stephen Lawrence, how his death changed the UK. The tragic death of Stephen Lawrence in 1993 stands as an important moment in modern British history. It marked a turning point in the fight against racial discrimination and highlighted systematic issues within the UK's law enforcement and justice system. Stephen Lawrence's legacy has had profound and lasting effects on British society, politics, and the broader conversation about race and equality. Who was Stephen Lawrence? Stephen Lawrence was a young black man from southeast London with aspirations of becoming an architect. On April 22nd, 1993, Stephen was brutally murdered in an unprovoked racist attack while waiting at a bus stop with his friend. The attackers were a group of white youths who targeted Stephen because of his race. This heinous crime shocked the nation and exposed the deep-seated racism that plagued British society. The failure of the initial investigation. The investigation into Stephen's murder revealed significant failures within the Metropolitan Police. The police response was marred by incompetence, a lack of urgency, and institutional racism. The authorities were accused of mishandling evidence, not taking witness statements seriously, and neglecting to pursue leads that might have led to the arrest and prosecution of the perpetrators. These failures created a sense of injustice among Stephen's family and the broader black community. The Macpherson Report and Institutional Racism. Stephen's parents, Doreen and Neville Lawrence, fought tirelessly for justice for their son. Their efforts led to a public inquiry into the handling of the case. The resulting Macpherson Report, published in 1999, was a watershed moment for British society. It concluded that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally racist, a term that would become a rallying cry for those fighting against discrimination in all its forms. The report made 70 recommendations to reform policing and the criminal justice system. including measures to improve accountability, training, and community relations. It also called for changes in the law to facilitate the prosecution of racially motivated crimes. The Macpherson report was instrumental in raising awareness of institutional racism and led to significant changes in the way the police operate. Changes in British society. The death of Stephen Lawrence and the subsequent inquiry had a profound impact on British society. It sparked a national conversation about race and racism, prompting many to question their own beliefs and biases. The report's recommendations prompted changes in police training and recruitment, emphasizing diversity and inclusion. Additionally, the public outcry following the report led to increased scrutiny of other institutions and a broader push for equality. Stephen Lawrence's legacy continues to inspire activists and advocates for racial justice. His story is a reminder of the ongoing struggle against discrimination and the importance of challenging systematic racism. The changes brought about by his tragic death have made the UK a more aware and inclusive society, but the journey towards equality is far from over. The death of Stephen Lawrence will always be a poignant reminder of the work that remains to be done to achieve a truly just and equitable society. The end. And there we are. That's the essay from this week's weekly lesson, which is on my website, which is there for you to study. And you can read it again on the transcript, which will accompany this podcast. Well, the way I see all of this, my own personal view, is that hatred is simply hatred. Now, some people say, well, racism, some people have racist views, so they hate. Other people say, well, I don't agree with that man's religious views, so I dislike or hate that man. Some people even say, well, I don't like the way that other person behaves, so I hate him. It's okay to agree to disagree on a point, but to hate someone is very strong, and in my opinion, hate leads to death. It can't go anywhere else except down that long corridor, which results in death. And another thing about hatred is it cannot be seen as something which just pops up when there's a difference of opinion. I think hatred exists alone. It's its own entity. Hatred is hatred. And it sometimes comes up because of ethnic reasons, when you don't like another person from another culture. It sometimes comes up when you don't like the way someone acts, sings, behaves. But hatred stands alone. It is hatred. It's not because of someone's religion, someone's ethnicity, someone's skin color, someone's behavior. I think hatred is its own thing. And we see evidence of it in different groups, but it stands alone. And I think to see it that way makes it easier to deal with. Because if you say, well, I'm a good guy and I love everyone except for this person that I really hate, it's still hatred. You can dress it up and say, well, actually, I'm good in other ways, but actually, hatred is only just hatred. It exists in itself, not as part of a view of something. And to see it that way allows us the freedom to completely eliminate it and get rid of it. For those of you who think that Britain is not a racist place, it's true that our laws are there to protect everyone, but daily we still find that there is a lot of discrimination, not only against black people, but against LGBTQI people as well, and many other types of people. So it's one of these things which needs to be looked at constantly. It's okay to disagree with the way people live, that's perfectly fine. But when it comes to extremism and you trying to impose your views on top of theirs, that's where there's a problem. And it's something to be very aware of. These days, in this podcast, as you know, I think it was last week or the week before, I was telling you that there's now laws to protect people from private views. So even in your own home, if you make comments which could be perceived as hatred and you have some intention of spreading those comments with a view to causing someone else to be offended, then you can find yourself in big trouble. So, yeah, the Stephen Lawrence thing forced all of us to look at our own views of racism. And we live in communities now where we don't talk to our neighbors, but we silently judge them because we don't know them. And it's this kind of thing that Stephen Lawrence Day is supposed to remind us of, about how racism leads to death. Now, many of you might say, yeah, but, the UK is very open with immigration. Anyone can go there. Well, that's changing. Our government is trying to change that. But even if you had those views on immigration, it's perfectly fine to disagree with the immigration policy, but it's not okay to hate the people who immigrate to the country because of our immigration policy. It just takes a little bit of extra thought. Because someone has immigrated to a different country and had children in that country, doesn't allow you to hate them. Okay, it just means that you disagree with the immigration rule. But while those people are living here and they've created their new life here, it reminds us, of course, that the world is a very big and diverse place. My view is you can learn so much from other people, from the way that they live. I get excited about meeting people from other cultures. It exposes me to delicious food, different ideas, and really to look for what we all have in common. And peace is part of that. I hear here in the UK, I hear a lot of people now saying that they're lonely, that we live in a way that's not open. And whenever I talk to people who are learning English here in the UK, I always hear the same question. Oh, but Teacher Joseph, how do I make friends with English culture and people in English culture? because all my friends are from other countries. But how do I make friends with English people? And there's no real answer to that, because I think by default, all of us, no matter what culture we come from, we are a little bit closed. And we can change that today just by saying hello to our neighbor. We don't need to, rush away and invite them for a meal, but just to make them feel a little bit welcome can go a long, long way. Well, that's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this and you've learned a little bit more about Stephen Lawrence Day and what that means. Okay, see you all. Take care. Bye.